Good evening, and welcome to Soluble, America's Political Central. Today is July the 24th in the year of our Lord 2023. We're going to be discussing all things in Washington, and I can't help but to reiterate and re-emphasize as much as I can, starting on each broadcast, that we're here for political solutions. Nothing more, nothing less. Now, although we are staunchly Democrat here at Soluble, we're prepared to call it the way we see it. If it's balls and strikes dealing with Democrats, we're calling balls and strikes. We're not trying to sugarcoat it. We're not trying to defend it, because at the end of the day, it's bigger than party. We're looking at America as a country and, trying to bring about political solution in a time of extreme partisanship, in extreme political differences, just real volatility in today's politics. Now, we'll come on the air and, we're discussing all things that are going on in Washington when it comes to Democrats and Republicans, and calling it like we see it. This is not something that, Soluble is pulling, out of the air, so to speak, as like a figment of our imagination. We're taking, what we're actually seeing happening today in Washington, today in politics, and we're putting it out there. Now, we'll come on and we'll begin to, discuss things that are going on both sides of the aisles, and what the positions are, and giving examples, giving clear examples of from one party extreme to the next. And for example, we've told you on several podcasts here in the past, you had a time when the Me Too movement was at its height, in the movement, and Senator Franken, the distinguished senator from Minnesota, he stepped down and resigned his position when it was brought to the American public's attention that he had made, some woman feel uncomfortable, somewhere on a movie set or something of that nature. But at the end of the day, the senator done the right thing and he resigned and he stepped down. Now, by contrast, on the other side of the aisle, when we see Republicans doing things that are unsavory, that doesn't speak well towards good American statesmanship when it comes to compromising politics or trying to work with the opposite party across the aisles. We just don't see it. We don't see standing down or backing down. We more or less see a double down. So when we come on the air and we begin to call it like it is, we're not, trying to do Republican bashing here. We're just calling it like we see it. And at the end of the day, we're hoping to, after putting it all out there, hope that we can get politicians to hold a mirror to their own face, to see the error of their ways. So, in order to solve, we have to tell it like it is. We have to deal with it from a truthful, factual basis. Now, as a staunch Democrat speaking here tonight, from a truthful and what I feel like factual basis, the Democrats are not doubling down. They're taking heed. They're in touch with the American pulse, with the temperament of the American people. And that's what it was at the time, all those years back when Senator Franken stepped down. He felt the pulse of the American people. He realized where things were, and he realized he had done something wrong. And so he did the honorable thing, the gentlemanly thing, which was resign his position and, let the work in Washington go on. Let the people's business go on without being, interference, if you will, or just, someone there that is a stark reminder, and it's causing a distraction as far as getting the work of the people done. So with that being said, in finality, we're not here to Republican bash, or for that matter, Democrat bash. We want to tell it like it is. And at the end of the day, we asking our politicians who are holding office, who are running for office, whether you be lobbyists, whether you be advisors, or what have you, to stop and take a long pause, because the politics in this country is starting to go to a place of violence. It's starting to go to a place of extreme chaos. And Soluble's purpose is, our hopes and intentions, if you will, is to bring it back from the brink and bring it back to the middle, to a position of compromise where you have both sides willing to reach across the aisle to compromise, to get something done for the American people on behalf of each and everyone's constituents in whatever district. Now, next month, here practically in 30 days, we'll have the Republican debates begin, for the nomination, to see who's going to compete with the current sitting president for the White House. Now, in putting it all out there and trying to solve, how did we get here? And as we've said, the Republic just had a birthday. And here we are 247 years later, since the time of 1776. Here we are 247 years later, here in America, a country founded in genocide, built up in slavery. And we fought battles. We've waged wars. We've had those discussions. We've dealt with sins of the past. And so here we are, here 247 years later as a country. Now, that's not quite, if you want to take it, if everything is everything, you can round it to the nearest number, and then there you have 250. But, if keeping it right and exact, we're at 247 years, we're right there on the verge of being just a quarter of a way to a millennia. So let's think about that for a second. Here we are as a country, just celebrated a 247th birthday as a nation. Not quite 1/4 of the way to a millennia. And just take a moment of pause to look at the state of politics, the state of being that we are as a country right now. 247 years. Now, by comparison, that great empire of Rome, it lasted, just over a millennia before it began to crumble and fall. And we're not even a quarter of the way there. And it seems as if we're slowly but surely beginning to implode as a nation. 247 years in. Now, based on history and fact, we've had Revolutionary War. We've had French and Indian War. We've had the war, the American Revolution, World Wars I, II, the Civil War, the wars with our Native American brothers and sisters. So we've had a lot of bloodshed, if you will, human interaction, physical human interaction, plenty of political debate to get us to this point where we are now, here some 247 years later. Now, usually, and I can't help but put a lot of emphasis on the word usually here. Usually, as we grow older, we should grow wiser. We should grow wiser. But here we are as a country, 247 years in, once again, not quite a quarter of the way to a millennia, not even 1/4 of the way to 1,000 years. So as a nation, we're still pretty much brand new. But do we have to, will we learn from the mistakes of our past, or will we have to keep taking 2 steps forward and 3 steps back as a nation? Because right here and now, at 247 years, not even quite 1/4 of the way to a millennium. As I said, it seems as if we're beginning to implode. Dealing with the politics of, for one, the politics of race, because as we've said here on this broadcast, um, there was a President Obama, and you know a lot of the so-called minorities in this country, people of color, Hispanics or whatever, thought that America had begun to turn a corner and begin to, operate on a level playing field, begin to operate from a position of equality. But no, but no, we were mistaken, because after Obama came and went, then along came President Donald J. Trump. And, to tell the truth, and only in order to solve, and as we've said here on this podcast, we have taken a Confederate ideology, which is now the Republican Party. And after all the battles were over and the war was won back in the 1860s, this Confederate ideology only died on the battlefield, only on the battlefield. So with that being said, knowing that the Confederate ideology lived on to travel in an ideological form to Washington, D.C., the age-old question now is, can America get out of its own way? Can America get out of its own way? And you have, here, the main, parties that govern the country, that form the position of, what kind of country we should be. You have one that is swearing an allegiance, a loyalty to the working class, to the middle class, and feeling as if, the economy should be grown from the middle class out. A strong military, equality for everyone, and then you have the Republican Party, on the other hand, that is still championing states' rights, which is, harkens back to, as I said, a Confederate ideology. And so our position here at Soluble is to bring to you the question, one, can America get out of its own way? At 247 years in, you would think that by now we would have moved on from the politics of race, from the politics of states' rights. What does the states want the right to do? I mean, we see what it was like in those days when the Confederacy had power. We see what it was like. They don't want so-called big brother, looking over their shoulder, telling them what to do. If they're doing something that's injustice, if they're doing something that's wrapped up in good old boyism, they don't want the federal government right there looking over their shoulder to correct something that may be contrary to what America really and truly stands for. So that's where we are today. Now, to that 90-something plus percentile, and to the rest of my fellow Democrats, but definitely that 90-something percentile in particular, you are the last line of defense for a safe and sound democracy in America. Now, I've said it once, and I'll say it 1,000 times. When you have a 90-something plus percentile of a voting block, that is a lot of power, because you don't see it nowhere else in American politics, where there's a voting block that is going with that kind of percentile going that one way. I mean, you don't have 90% of, Caucasians voting for Republicans, or 90% of Caucasians voting for Democrats or independents. So how do you harness that power in order to save America? Because truly, that 90-something plus percentile people of color who are holding strong in the Democratic Party might be the last best saving grace for America. because it is what it is. Here we are, 247 years in as a republic, as a democracy, and we're still stuck on oftentimes the politics of race. Or at least, that's where it seems as if the previous president was ready to take it without, coming out and being man enough to directly say it. That make America great again was going to turn America back to a time, before there was ever a black president in America. And that's basically where it was at. Now, if any of our listeners, if anyone out there, is ready to debate it, out of another lens or from another viewpoint, then we gladly welcome it. But our position here at Soluble is that along came Obama with change we could believe in, ready to move America forward. And after Obama, along came Trump, ready to turn the hands of time back again. Now, it's bad for America because, we know that former President Obama rolled up his sleeves and did what he thought was best, governing from a Democratic position. We may not have agreed with everything he did. We here at Soluble don't. We don't agree with each and everything, each and every bit of legislation that the president championed, or each and every idea that he pushed. And that's what makes democracy great. That's what makes the country great and democracy great. To my fellow Democrats, especially to those people of color that is holding that 90-something percentile loyalty and allegiance to the Democratic Party. You're what carry elections for Democrats. Make no mistake about it. When that 90-something plus percentile shows up, when it shows up, you are what makes the difference for the Democratic Party. And that's why our position here at Soluble is that, this 90-something plus percentile sticking together, holding together, not being fractured, not going into the 88 percentile range, 87 percentile range. When that happens, someone's not showing up. And when someone's not showing up, then we have a chance for minority rule. And we've seen what that looks like. So trust and believe. And make no mistake about it. When you get these numbers up and show up, both together, getting the numbers up and showing up, you make a difference. You carry the election. And therefore, you save democracy from a Confederate ideology that's moved on from the battlefield and now has come to the halls of Washington, D.C., where it's been ever since 1864. You know what it's like as Democrats, to have to fight to vote, have to risk life and limb to vote, have to risk assault, attacks at the polls, through literacy tests, poll taxes. You know what it's been like. So showing up is vitally important because it saves America from itself. Now, we can't understand why and how, after over 100 years, we're still stuck in this position. Now, you've often heard, American historians, scholars, political leaders, leaders in general say that, we've moved on from our sins of the past and we're looking forward to a brighter future. And that is very much possible. That's very much possible when you're showing up to vote, because make no mistake about it, we see what happened when we took our foot off the gas after Obama, during the time when Hillary Rodham Clinton was being successfully smeared and slandered by the Republican Party. We saw what it was like to become complacent, to, sit this one out, so to speak. And that's how we got, the former menace to the Constitution that was Donald J. Trump. Now, we know that independence in this country, they can make or break an election when it comes to a Democratic candidate. They can take away votes and help the Republicans out. You hardly ever see this trend working the opposite way, where you will have a Republican going up against another Republican. That increases the Democrats' chances. Now, by all means, we want the former president to be the nominee because we know that he can be beat. And we'll have to get prepared for when he is defeated. I mean, we know it happened the last time. You had running up to the 2020 election, which was held in November of 2020. But during the run up to the election, starting somewhere there in like August, you constantly heard the president talking about a rigged election. It was going to be cheating. He was already setting the stage because he knew he couldn't win. He knew he had blew it. So what best next? If I can't have it, then I'll burn it down on the way out. And all this from a former president who claims to love his country. All this from a former president who claims to love his country. So we have work to do. Now, there's been times in the past, but that's just what it is. To my fellow Democrats, there have been times here in the past where it's been, just the thought of trying to vote was terrifying. It was filled with trauma because you didn't know if you were going to be attacked or how you were going to be attacked. But that ship has sailed now. So to not take advantage and be ready to come out on election day and cast a ballot is, a win for the Confederacy, if you will, for this Confederacy ideology that prevails in what is today the modern day Republican Party. Now we have, two candidates that are thinking about throwing their hat in the ring from the Democrat side. We have RFK Jr. and we have Brother Cornel West. And both of these candidates, I mean, it's the American way. If it's their choice to throw their hat into the ring, to make a run for the Oval Office, no one can stop them. That's the great thing about the country. As we've said here, it's soluble. Now, with RFK Jr., he's out there, by his own family's accounts. We've heard some of the conspiracy theories here. COVID was put here, to kill, Negroes and Caucasians and to save the Chinese and a certain sect of the Jews. We don't know where his sources are coming from. We don't know if this is QAnon conspiracy. We don't know if this is actually rooted in governmental fact, and he has sources that he's not ready to reveal. But it seems very far-fetched. Brother Cornel West, he's coming from a position of usually strong Democratic points of view, the working class, helping the poor and struggling in this country to try to get ahead, helping the poor and struggling in this country with, making sure they have good health care, access to great health care. This is, Brother Cornel West. These are the things that he's talking about in the early stages of, I guess, testing the waters, if you will. Now, for us, we have to be careful, and look at the fact of, can either one of these candidates not only beat President Biden, but can they win in a general election against the former president? But because by all indicators right now, he will be the nominee competing against Joe Biden for the 2024 job of being president of the United States. He looks like he is the leader right now by all polls that have come out. The former president is leading by comfortable margins over DeSantis, over Scott. So it would be foolish of us to think anything other than getting our numbers up. Because we've seen this movie before. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. The former president is grifting more than ever. And we have to think about this. Here we've never seen in our lifetime a president who claims to love his country, but is every day, it seems, working to undermine the institutional norms, to do something, crooked or corrupt as it relates to how a president should be carrying himself. One who, loves his country, one who's patriotic to his country, one who is putting country first. We don't see indicators here. We don't see the measurements based on all measures that have been taken by previous presidents. We just don't see it. We see a president who is full of himself and, power hungry, not to necessarily make America great again. It's easily said, but it seems as if, it's just a power trip that is based on ego, prestige, notoriety, or whatever. But as far as what's best for the American people, I mean, if the former president was really there, our position here at Soluble is that he would bow out. He wouldn't run, because we've never seen a former president who's done so much damage and still be willing to throw his hat in the ring again to repeat the same thing, because nothing has changed. You had the president here a couple of days ago last week, during a press conference, and his position on climate change is that with the oceans rising, that'll mean more beachfront property. How tone deaf can you be? We're not making this up. Although it's stranger than fiction, this is what has been said out of the mouth of a former president of the United States of America. Now, to solve it, to get politicians who are in office working across the aisles again, we need to show up and large numbers, plain and simple. This is the solution. We need that blue wave now more than ever. We need that blue wave. And the only way we're going to get it is to get our numbers up and to get our numbers out. Now, we're dealing with a dangerous opposition here. And we know that independence in this country can, either make or break a Democratic presidency. We know this. And based on all past elections since 2016, the majority of independents are going to line up with Democrats if the former president is the nominee. But we can't rest on that. And, this is to all my fellow Democrats, especially that 90-something plus percentile, people of color. We know your sticking points. We know your grievances. And we're here to fully address it and create a forum and a broadcast where you can come in and voice your concerns, voice your ideals for change also. Because, you can rest assured that it's going to be steps forward and steps backwards for this nation if we don't hold that percentile, get those numbers out in each and every election. Then America is going to begin to even further implode. Every other day we have a mass shooting. What are the Republicans doing to address it? How do we solve it if we have, two parties where one is not willing to reach across the aisle and work with the other? I mean, as I said, every other day, every other week, there's a mass shooting or two. Climate change is affecting our lives daily in some part of the country each and every week, month after month. And with the slim majority right now that the Republicans have in the House, it's investigations. It's investigations. And we here at Soluble, we've revealed this to you. And it's not that we, claim to have some crystal ball or we can predict the future here. But we've seen it. It's the same playbook. And so, if you're reading out of the same playbook, then you're going to be running the same plays. And where we're at right now with the slim majority that the Republicans have in the House right now is, if we can't out legislate, let's investigate. And so that's where we are. There is no serious legislation going on dealing with climate change. There is no serious legislation going on that deals with the epidemic of gun violence in the country. And why is this? First and foremost, the reason why it is because we are not showing up each and every time. Because as we've said here at Soluble, the Republican voting demographic that keeps them in power time after time, or every other 4 years, or every other 8 years, that demographic is shrinking. That racist Republican demographic is shrinking. And they know this. But at the same time, if we don't show up in the large numbers, because everything can be discussed in the Democratic Party, everything is on the table for discussion. We will not, we cannot, and we should not try to sweep it up under the rug and act like it doesn't exist or to make it go away by force, because it's a free country and it's freedom of expression. And every group is going to take the opportunity to exercise that freedom. What's the point of having it if you don't? What's the point of having that kind of free power if you don't exercise it? Because we are in a situation where you either use it or lose it. You either use it or lose it. Now we're 247 years in to a republic. And this is where we at this point in time. After 247 years, mass shootings, climate change is destroying the country. We're going with these invented culture wars. These things are just things that the Republicans conjure up as propaganda, as things that a way of scaring the American voter. When have we ever thought in this country that somebody having an awakening of any kind, a spouse having an awakening from the domestic abuse that he or she has been suffering for years, the country having an awakening as to what kind of a foreign power is trying to encroach upon us. The kid who's being picked on at school, he's having an awakening of what really should be happening when you stand up to a bully. What you really should be doing when it comes to standing up to a bully. In all these instances, whenever awakening is looked at or becoming awoke in those senses of dealing with a bully, of changing the course of spousal abuse, it's a good thing. It's always been a good thing to have an awakening, because it represents a new change, a new beginning, doing things different, out with the old and in with the new. But yet, in the Republican Party, they have found a way to twist, conjure up, shape, mold this woke ideology. And all of a sudden, now being woke or being awakened is a bad thing. It's a bad thing. And, at Soluble, we're going to put it out there just like we see it in order to try to solve. This looks like, something coming from a Confederate ideology in the form of the new Republican Party, of the Republican Party that is today saying, to all so-called minorities, Negroes in particular, stay in your place. You know, um, don't try to awaken and be, and go somewhere that you've never been in America, because if you do try to awaken, or if you become woke in that way, then that's dangerous for America. How? How? When we're all living, functioning, and trying to thrive under the same umbrella of democracy. But here we are with the Republicans coming with what they're calling, labeling or stoking as a cultural war. And nothing could be further than the truth. This is just everyday Americans, you know, drawing conclusions, coming up with ideals to make life better for everyone. But from a Republican point of view, it's a woke ideology and it's bad for America. Nothing can be further than the truth. Now, as I said, we're here some 30 days out from the beginning of the Republican debates to see who will win the nomination to be the Republican contender for the presidency of the United States. It's only been able, think about it. Here we are since the 1860s, where this ideology was killed and snuffed out on the battlefield. And this is to all my Democrats, but especially that 90-something percentile voting bloc that goes into the voting booth, each and every election cycle and votes for the Democratic Party. Now, from 1864 to now, you've had it rough. As I said, you had all kind of obstacles in your way when it comes to being able to vote. And they're still there. They're still being put there with the intention of trying to discourage you, keep you from showing up, or stop you from voting altogether. Through tactics like stopping early voting, Sunday to the polls, restricting mail-in ballots, or what qualifies as a mail-in ballot, trying to take a ballot and finding the least little thing to toss it out. Taking rights from felons to vote forever. So it's still going on, but we have strength in numbers. And so, from where we are now, this is the opportune time now to take and reflect back after 247 years, as a country. Or reflect, take time to reflect, to consider and to contemplate. What would the country be like if we showed up each and every time? Full measure, full stop. Because if you don't, and these things, are happening in America where, you have a minority rule, in some kind of way, a Republican gets into the Oval Office or gets into positions of power in Washington, D.C., then you only have yourself to blame now. And I'm talking to my fellow Democrats in particular, because those obstacles are not there to stop you now. Of course, as I just mentioned, they're deterrents. There are things to deter you that are there still. But it's not a full stop measure like it once used to be. These are things that we can work around, with determination. So, it's up to us as Democrats. We have the power to save it now. For one, because as I said, the Republicans don't have the numbers. The demographic is shrinking. They don't have the numbers like that anymore. And so they resort to desperate measures. To try to cheat you out of it. Let the former president set the table for an opportunity to present the election as tainted, as illegitimate. As I said, leading up to the election of 2020, that's all you heard the former president talking about. The election is rigged. They're going to cheat. Mail-in ballots are suspicious. You can't trust them. Straight out of the Republican playbook. We can't win. You know, we know we've turned the vast majority of America against us, you know, with this Make America Great Again movement. And so they allowed the president to do this, to sow seeds of doubt, to create doubt before the first vote was ever even cast or counted. He successfully was able to, you know, make people feel as if the election was going to be rigged or it wasn't going to be legitimate, simply because they don't have the numbers. And so you see it now. You see it now. A lot has been solved, and we have the potential to solve a lot more. I mean, you know, we don't see the social unrest. You know, we don't see the hate groups out front so much more now. And so that's you know, up for you to take a strong look at. As I said, it's time to consider and contemplate. Why are they not there now under President Biden? But the hate groups were so prominent under President Trump. You vote one out, you vote the other out. You vote one out, you get rid of the other. And so that's the way it is now. You know, more of a social reckoning in America. You know, more of a come to Jesus moment where we do take time to take a long look at ourselves as individuals and to see if, as Americans, is the MAGA movement where we want to go, where we want to be. Is that the direction that we want to go in? And we made a decision. And so you see the change. You see the difference right away. From social unrest to social order, to police, you know, not being held accountable, to more police accountability now. You don't see Asian Americans being attacked as, you know, if they're the sole reason why, you know, the coronavirus came and went. Now, the Supreme Court is still stacked because these are lifetime appointments. And so all the more reason that we need to show up to the polls because, you know, you have some there, you know, maybe a Thomas, maybe possibly an Alito. That's, you know, they're waiting for the next election cycle. And you can bet, you know, your last money that if a Republican president occupies the Oval Office beginning in 2024, one of them or both of them will be glad to step down. They'll be glad to step down because they know that that seat is going to be filled with another conservative who is going to keep the court further tilted to the right, which is not really the pulse of the American people. But let it be a lesson learned as to, you know, where you don't show up. And now, you know, we have a former President Trump seating Supreme Court justices versus or would have been former President Hillary Rodham Clinton had we shown up in large numbers. Now, we're going forward as the debates began, you know, from the Republican point of view. We're going to, you know, touch on each and every issue. We're going to bring forth a dialogue, if you will, debate to show that so-called minorities in this country are better off under a Democratic umbrella. And we're not, you know, just going to tell you that, but we're going to give clear-cut examples as to why, you know, we feel, and hopefully the debate will show that the country works better under Democratic leadership versus Republican leadership. Now, you know, the leading nominee from the Republican side is under indictment. You know, he's having cases being brought against him on a regular basis. And this is, you know, a former president who loves his country. We've never seen it before. We've never seen a president who loves his country so much, but at the same time does everything to undermine the institutional norms or the system of checks and balances that we have governing in this country. We've never seen it before. So our mission here at Soluble is to give you the picture clearly and yet and still let you decide. Yet and still let you decide, whether it's going to be going forward Republican leadership or Democratic leadership. And you see it. You see it, as I said, right here and right now. The only thing that Republicans are interested in right now is investigations. Something is going on with Hunter Biden that is going to bring down America. True or false? Now, if my house needs cleaning up, dirt is on the floor, some swept up under the rug, things need to be wiped down, the floor is sticky when you walk on it, why am I out of my house and at my next door neighbor's house pointing out things to them that they need to clean up in their house? Should I not start with my own house first? You would think so, because it would be very, very hypocritical of me if I didn't. But here you have the Republican Party that can find no wrong in a Trump administration full of actors. Some people who don't have proper security clearances. What is Ivanka and Jared doing? When they're out here possibly making deals on the American taxpayers' dime. The president has, 5-star hotel right in Washington, D.C., where all foreign travelers, when they come, this is where they stay, looking to curry favor. You have the Supreme Court justices not giving full disclosure as far as their spending and the people who are giving them gifts. They're supposed to report these things down to the dollar number. But the Republicans can find no reason to investigate this. Out of all the things that are going on in their house. Now keep this in mind, ladies and gentlemen. Out of all the things that are going on in their house, the only thing that they can find time to do is investigate Hunter Biden. Is to investigate Hunter Biden. If the former president, was, under some kind of secret that the Russians held over his head, if he had done something unbeknownst to the American people, and Russia was holding over his head to use it against him, they don't want to look into that. If the Russians have interfered with the election, they don't want to look into that. If the former president is bribing foreign officials with American taxpayer money, if the former president is inciting violence and inciting riots, they don't want to get to the bottom of this. They want to take all of this that is going on in their house and be able to say, well, no, everything is fine over here. But at the same time, let's go over to the Democrats' house and help them get their house in order. And out of all people, Hunter Biden has never held public office. Not that we know of. Not that where, he's been in a position of power to really do damage to American democracy. What office is Hunter held? What office is Hunter held? You have an FBI director in Christopher Wray, a Trump-appointed director. He hasn't come forward with anything. And if there was something there, don't you think that the director, and we're not just going to say this because he's a Republican, but by all accounts, he seems to be a loyal, patriotic servant to the Constitution, just trying to do the best he can at the Bureau. He doesn't seem like a guy who will, look the other way while corruption is going on, especially from a president whose son is a president who is a Democrat. and where he may or may not be able to do damage to the Democratic Party, or where he may be able to hurt the current president's chances of being reelected. And most of all, if there was actually something that Hunter Biden was doing that was a clear and present danger to the Republic. FBI Director Wray is, by all accounts, doesn't seem like the type of guy to bury his head in the sand and let Hunter do these type of things without bringing it to the attention of the American people, without bringing about the full power of the Department of Justice to deal with it. So this is the other side. And as I said, it seems to be, if we can't out-legislate, then let's investigate in order to tear down, in order to smear just enough that we can win the next election. And so this is where we're at. To my fellow Americans, to my fellow Democrats, this is where we're at. This party has no desire. They have no vision as to a better America going forward. Investigating Hunter Biden is not going to get it. You know, we've had these investigations, they may currently still be going on, where they're trying to show that there's biasness within the FBI bureau. You know, we have this deep state that's seated inside the bureau that's biased against Republicans. The hearings haven't produced anything. And so this is where we're at with the American taxpayers' dime. We're investigating when we should be legislating. And the investigations are nothing more than an exercise in futility. Nothing more. Nothing more. The same thing with Benghazi, Whitewater, the Rose Law Firm. This party has no vision, you know, looking forward for a positive path for America to go down, and bringing all of the citizens along for that ride. They have no vision. They have no plan. Remember, replace, repeal, and replace. Lest we forget. It's the same thing now. When it came to repeal and replace, there was nothing there. And so now here we are with a slim majority, and all the things that are going on in America and in the world. We have the Republican Party investigating. Investigation that leads to nothing, to nowhere. And this is not a tit for tat thing. Our position here in Saudi was that we shouldn't feel as if, well, you know, when the former president was in office, we know his son-in-law and his daughter, and you know, a lot of his cronies were doing underhanded things. So it should be all right for, you know, they should let Hunter ride. That's not our position. But we've already shown that the Democrats are willing to hold their own accountable. They bought forth charges on Hunter. And the Republicans still are not satisfied. The federal government, you know, at the federal level, they're not going to bring charges that they can't make stick. The Republicans know this. They know this. And so, you know, going forward, we're going to further break it down to you. Now, as we've stated before, and just keep this in mind, now that the former president is being fully investigated, then the first thing that the Republicans say is, you know, what about Hillary and her emails and her private server? Well, you had Director Comey right there. He came with an 11-hour stunt that cost her the election. And if there was some there, why didn't he prosecute further? We're just getting you warmed up for what's to come. a party when it comes to the Democrats who are trying to take America forward, and they're open for opinion. They're open to suggestion. They're listening. They're governing from a point of view or from a position that they've ran on. And that's important because, it takes us as the Democratic voters, as constituents, to push that agenda, to make them do the right thing. Someone has to be the bigger party here. It should be both parties working together to save America. But here we are in what seems is, 247 years in, not even a fourth of a way to a millennium, where it seems that we're starting to implode, and there's, one party trying to move America forward, and there's one party trying to take America back. And so, we're going to have to, take a long look in the mirror here, Democrats and Republicans, and ask ourselves, how intelligent can we be to still have a Confederate ideology that lingers in Washington, D.C., simply because we can't vote it out. This is the way that it goes away. You vote it away. Now, as I said, to that 90-something plus percentile, in the past, you've had to deal with all kind of things that has made it hard for you to vote. And so now that that's not the case, you ought to be bursting through the floodgates to try to get this Confederate ideology out of government, because it's holding up progress. It's holding up progress. And we definitely have to beat them again going into 2024 just to see if, the laws are fair and equal. Because right now, it seems as if, the former president is pushing the envelope to the point where we're almost ready to say, there is one person that's above the law. And that would truly be the undoing of America, if we're able to say that about one person. Now, the position that we've taken thus far as a country, that no one is above the law, has kept democracy afloat. And we see what's going on now with the former president and the way he's challenging it, the way he's trying to chip away at it and tear it down. We see the chaos that happened on January the 6th. To keep democracy afloat, we're going to have to come out. We're going to have to come out as if, our freedoms depend on it, because they actually do. We see what the Supreme Court is doing. And so it's now or never for us as Democrats, especially for those, that voting bloc, and you know who you are, that 90-something percentile. We don't have to, continue to push forward from a reactionary point of view, or from a position of reacting. We have a chance now to be proactive. And one of the most important things you could do as far as being proactive in a democracy is to go out and vote. Plain and simple. We show up in that 90-something plus percentile, hold that voting block solid, hold that number solid, and show up at the polls in those same numbers, then we win every time, and we save America. And anything less would be, it would be totally on us. If there's another epidemic or rash or a time period in America where we go back to just rampant and blatant police brutality, racism, discrimination, no equal opportunity when it comes to access to medical care, jobs. It's now or never. We have the power. We're power sharing now, as we've informed you here. If you didn't know it, to also call minorities in America, we're power sharing now under the Democratic Party umbrella. It's an umbrella of inclusion, not exclusion. And you hear the same thing from the right. I know you've heard it. But seeing is believing. Tell me anything. Seeing is believing. And what we haven't saw is a minority candidate, whether he's leading in the ticket or whether he's a running mate as vice president. We haven't saw it since the days and times when Strom Thurmond rebelled under the Dixiecrat label. We haven't saw it. We haven't saw a so-called minority. But yet this is a party that is telling us that, it's not a party of racists. It's not a party of racism. Well, tell me anything. But now I want to see. And that should be the position of all of us as Americans. If the best man for the job just happens to be Caucasian, then so be it. There's no problem. If the best Republican for the job, for the nomination is Caucasian, it is what it is. And that's what we're championing. We're not here to play the race card to say, give me a black Republican president, or give me a black Republican nominee, or give me a white Caucasian Republican nominee. We're not here to play the race card. We're looking for the best man for the job. And our position here at Soluble is that we don't think that the former president is that said best man for this job. We've seen it before. We've seen his incapability as a real estate guy and someone who has been on TV with his own reality show. It just doesn't transfer over to politics and being the leader of the free world. We've tried it. And in 2024, if we don't rock the vote again in the same large numbers that we did in 2020, then it's just possible that the former president will win the nomination, possibly the Oval Office, and we feel here at Soluble that will be the beginning of the doom and gloom of this great country. 247 years in. This is the thought that we want to leave you with tonight here at Soluble. We're 247 years in as a country. From the year 1776 up to now. This July the 4th, 2023 has been 247 years. We haven't even reached 1/4 of the way to a millennium as a country. We haven't reached 1/4 of the way to 1,000 years. And this is as far as we've come. But because we can't get past our states' rights ideology, something that we killed on the battlefield, and those disgruntled citizens had to repatriate, repledge, pledge an oath to rejoin the Union. And this is where we're at after 247 years. As a country with, a vast amount of institutions of higher learning, you would think that more intelligent heads would prevail. But yet here we are. And so going into the Republican debates for the nomination, which will begin in August the 23rd of next month, we're going to highlight each and everything, each and every issue, and give our position as to why we feel like Democrats are better suited to move America forward. And, as we debate, as we talk, as we listen, we'll let the chips fall where they may. We'll let the chips fall where they may, but we're open for, any ideas, any suggestions. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to solve here for each and every one, whether you're born in the country or whether you're immigrating here. We're a nation of immigrants. So to keep America at its best and to keep America at the forefront of humanity when it comes to freedom, equality for all, it's still a work in progress. It's still a work in progress for Negroes in this country. But with that being said, then it's quite possibly that the Negro could be his own worst enemy when it comes to being in this situation. Because now you have the power to make change through your vote. And that's your voice being heard through your vote. So we want you to think about that. We'll leave you with that. And until the next time, 247 years in, not even not even a quarter of a way to a millennium, as a country that's still quite young. But at the same time, based on all we've been through, we should have learned from all the things that have happened in the past and become a better country for it, ready to move forward into the 21st century. But here we are, seems to be stuck and mired down in, you know, state government versus federal government, when they all should be able to work hand in hand. And they're not. And so we're going to bring it to you, break it all down, put it out there plainly and clearly for you to see it. And then, you have a choice to make, and we're at a critical mass here, as to what kind of country we're going to be going forward. Because right now, the Republicans are desperate. They're willing to do anything low down, underhanded, because of a change in demographic. Now, you would think in a democracy they will begin to possibly rebrand themselves, retool themselves, and come out with a brand new message in order to win over more voters. But it seems as if they're stuck in the same playbook. And so, our goal is to be here for revelation, revealing, more eye-opening, so that, you can make the correct decision going forward in to the election of 2024. That's all we have for tonight here at Soluble. And as I said, going forward, we will be here discussing all things politics, trying to bring forth a path, a solution, of governance in the country that we can all live under, live together, and thrive as a nation of citizens, whether we're thriving together or individually. That's the beauty of America. And so we're hoping to keep that 90-something percentile strong and make it even stronger. And we plan to make the case as to why it shouldn't lessen and or weaken for the Confederate Party that is rebranded as the Republican Party in the United States of America. So until the next time, we leave you with that thought. A country that's 247 years old, not even the fourth of a way to a millennia, and we seem to be imploding from the inside as a country. And so, it's time for all intelligent heads to come together and decide what kind of country we're going to be going forward. Because, it's two things that we can do. We can either live together or we can harm each other and die together. Now, the civilized thing would be for us to find solutions and be able to compromise and live together. That's what we've done up to this point. But here we are 247 years in, and it's critical mass with the things that are going on in America after 247 years. We thank you for joining us tonight. We hope that we have been eye-opening, revealing, maybe bring some light bulb moments into your head, give you things to think about, and respond back. We'd love to hear response. We'd love to hear something from the other side of the aisle, trying to solve and make politics better in America. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're here. That's what we're all about here at Soluble. So if it's Democrats, we'll hold them to even a higher standard than Republicans. We're ready to call it out. And, so look forward to it going forward. Whether it's Democrats, Republicans, Independents, we're going to tell it like it is in order to hopefully come up with a solution for a better America for all American citizens, whether you're born in the country or whether you've immigrated here. So until the next time, this is Soluble signing off. We thank you for joining us. Until the next time, good night and God bless. This is Soluble saying thank you and good night.